We are recording. Tony Amendola, welcome, 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 and thank you so very much for joining me on Hathor Hosts. What a treat and a delight it is to have you with me. We had a little bit of a false start there, but we're off and running now, so that's good. How has your day been going?
You know, it's going well. I had a lovely walk this morning. You know, I've been getting out, trying to walk 3 or 5 miles to start my day,
Very
just
good.
to get energy up. Yeah, it's been nice. You know, I see deer. I see other living things, which are important. So
Amazing, amazing.
yeah.
Well, tonight I wanted to say, rather than sort of start chronologically with your career, because you've had such an extraordinary and illustrious career that has gone on, and for 40 odd years, is it, that you've been working as an actor? And I mean, that's remarkable.
Yeah.
So rather than work chronologically, we're going to just sort of hand pick some of your incredible credits and dip in and out, a lucky dip, if you will, of your amazing work. But before we do that, I'm always curious to see how actors get started in their careers. And what I wanted to know is, you'd said somewhere once before that there are two types of actors. There are lifers, and then there are those who sort of fall into it, and that you are in the latter category. So can you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah. You know, there are people who, from the time they were born, they knew they were going to be actors or performers, and they've had a craving for it. They're the people that you know, have shows in their living rooms and put on puppet plays and do all those wonderful things that I think are lovely. I never had that. I sort of had a very regular childhood, no interest in theater or any of those things, but, you know, interested in sports, interested in those types of things, and then stumbled into acting in college.
Right. And
stumbled into it primarily socially, you know, to have a place to put my energy and my passion as a college student, not knowing what to do with it. And only later that I realized and begin to respect what acting is, you know, and the kind of place it can lead you. And I think so. That's what I mean by that. And, you know, on one hand, I didn't have the tools that a person would have if they started at 9 with dancing and singing lessons and all those things. But on the other hand, I had my childhood.
Yeah.
That wasn't about that. So, you know, it's a trade-off. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, when you did start acting, you sort of said you literally fell into it. So what did that mean?
I stumbled into an audition. I literally stumbled into an audition at a school, and it was a state teachers college. And so it was probably maybe 3 women for each man, that type of situation. And so consequently, if you could walk and you were male, you were in the play. Yeah. And luckily, there was quite a wonderful instructor there who had just retired from the Yale School of Drama. I grew up in New Haven, and she had really amazing students. And so she would tutor me.
Yeah.
During her lunch hour, you know, so I ended up spending a lot of time with her, and that was really, her name was Constance Welch. It was very old school training. It was right in the late 60s, early 70s, and there was a real divide about what acting is. And she was a very old school type teacher, but very, very useful to me.
Oh, fantastic. And stood you in good stead later on.
Yeah.
You spent about 14 years, I think it was, sort of cutting your teeth on theatre, which is always the best training in the world. And in particular, some of the greatest dialogue ever written, which is, of course, Shakespeare. And you have played some amazing Shakespearean roles. I mean, Titans, Shylock, Lear. And I wondered what it was about Shakespeare that sort of keeps drawing you back.
You know, it was the first play I ever did. Speaking of Constance Welch, she cast me in The Tempest and in Cymbeline. And I think it was because I was Mediterranean looking, and there were wonderful parts in Shakespeare for that. And then gradually, you know, I like to think of Shakespeare as being like, it's sort of like juggling. And it's an additional ball or two. Because not only we're modern actors, so we have to look for the psychology and those things within a character. And yet at the same time, we're juggling the language, we're juggling other aspects, big ideas. And so consequently, I think that's what draws me to it. I've always been probably foolishly comfortable in it because I was never told that what I was doing was wrong. It was the first lines I ever spoke. I don't want to misrepresent myself and say, I know how to do Shakespeare. This is the way. No, it was just something. And I had wonderful opportunities, in addition to, the Lear and Shylock, I got to do Iago twice.
Oh, wow.
Leon twice,
Oh.
10 years apart. So it was always interesting to do a role and shape it and then come back to it 10 years later. So, you've been on stage, you've had that experience on stage. Now, where can you take it? What have those 10 years meant to you, particularly with, some of the bigger roles? Yeah. And, they all break down to very human things. What does it feel like to be slighted? Mm-hmm. To feel like you're disrespected. It's funny, when I was doing Othello, some people, the extremity of what Iago puts Othello through, they thought, well, I don't know about, they didn't believe it. And I said, it's funny you say you can't believe it because, I grew up in a world where, when boys had something to work out, they worked it out with their fists, maybe a stick. Yeah. Now we live in a world where you shoot everyone on the stoop. Yeah. And you can understand why, and Lear, of course, just the rage, mm-hmm. the simple rage of losing power and getting old. Yeah. And, it's hard, that's hard to explain to a 35-year-old, but when you get, older, you begin to realize those, we're so conscious of slights these days. And age is a very interesting one, when, yeah. And so as an actor, great, you tie into those things as an actor. And consequently, that's why, everyone thinks actors are neurotic. No, it's actors who don't work. Because if you're a working actor and lucky, you get to work all that stuff out.
Yeah, and there is something, the kind of, I'm sort of starting to experience it now, being an older woman in the business, and particularly a woman who was cast in certain roles earlier in my career, and that now suddenly I'm very aware that that's beginning to shift. And yes. Even though on a practical and from the text point of view, I'm like, oh my God, there's still amazing roles to play. There's still so much to explore and see. But I have to be honest, like, it's from a vanity point of view, looking in the mirror, it's hard. And looking at self-tapes where you're like, oh, is that what I look like? It's brutal. It's difficult.
It is. I like to say it's difficult for men, nearly impossible for women.
Yeah.
But that said, your age has taken you into a place where you can live, which is a powerful woman. In other words, I never would have thought of you as an ingenue. I thought of you as a leading lady. And right. It's strange, it's strange because some people, particularly ingenues and even young juveniles, that mm-hmm. when they get older, they no longer make sense.
Yeah.
People see them and they still see the youth and they can't quite see the adult. But you, there's plenty, it's difficult, but you still make sense.
Well, honey, from your lips to God's ears, let's hope. Getting back to Shakespeare for a minute, I think so many people are really terrified by the language. And I think certainly younger people today look at Shakespeare and think, oh, I don't even know where to start. Did you ever feel slightly daunted by the language, or was it just something you went, yeah, makes sense?
Yeah, I think I did, but I just barreled through it. And, as they say, sometimes you can search for the truth and sometimes you just barrel through and hope the truth catches up with you. So, I just barreled through, and it is difficult language. But that's the richness of it too. It's funny. I'm doing a project. I just, as a matter of fact, yesterday did a reading of The Tempest, and it's an adapted text. They got very well-known playwrights to work on Shakespeare's text and dust it a little bit and make it clearer. And they've done an amazing job because it is crystal clear.
Yeah.
But occasionally you think, that is crystal clear, but I miss the rhythm and I miss the distillation of being able to say a lot with not that many words.
Yeah.
And generally what ends up happening as a modern text, that one line of Shakespeare takes 2 lines to explain when you're trying to explain every nuance of it. And so it's interesting. I love that they're doing it, because anything that gets people to Shakespeare, I think, is worthwhile. So.
Absolutely. And also, I think the theatre, you were saying, if I looked at your career, or as I was preparing and I was looking at your work, you constantly go back to the theatre. You've had this wonderful film and television career, but it's balanced out by theatre. What is it that you love so much about returning to the theatre?
The immediacy is one. It's the source for me. There's some people that never wanted to be theater actors. They always wanted to do film and television.
Yeah.
And that's where they feel most powerful. Me, I wish someday, and there have been times where what I feel I have inside of me has a vessel for it in television, film, but generally not. It hasn't been. And I'm very lucky. I'm not complaining. And third, and most importantly, is I get to play the symphony every night.
Yeah.
I get to play what the role is every night. And so often when you do a film or a television thing, it's clipped and your best work may not even be in it. It's also very democratic. If either of us is on stage with the biggest star in the world, the audience will look at them, look at us, and then make up their mind after 50 of who they want to watch. And they create the close-up.
Yeah.
They're the ones, it's their attention. So it's consequently, it's much more democratic than, say, doing a film or television with a star, which is a wonderful thing. Where you realize, no, well, I'll give you an example. I did Lewis and Clark. Excuse me, not Lewis, Lois and Clark. Lewis and Clark, I did a play.
That's another
that's another thing. I was sitting with the producer. For some reason, the producer was very talkative, and we just hit it off. Generally, as actors, you have to just sit and, a conversation will develop or not. An actor came up to him, one of the regulars, and had a sort of a slightly heated, whispered conversation. And he said to me afterwards, "You actors." And I said, "What?" He says, "Well, this guy's a regular on the show. We're paying him a ton of money. We brought in a big star guest spot and are paying him an enormous amount of money. And he comes up and asks me, will he get 50-50 coverage with him? He wants to be certain that in the scene." And I told him, "Of course you'll get 50-50 coverage." I lied to him. You're a star, all this money. So there it is. This guy could have done the best work in the world, but it's going to be tilted towards that star, and it's as it should be. It's no conspiracy. Whereas on stage, it's every man and woman for themselves, and yet all in it together. You know, that you have to earn your keep. You have to. There's no second take. There's no third take. You have to be there. So I enjoy the challenge of that. And I'll say one other thing. Sometimes you can be beaten down, film and television. You get roles or don't get roles for no reason. Example, a friend of mine auditioned for a film, didn't hear for 3 months. Finally, he got the job. He panicked. He said, I don't know what I did anymore. They showed him the tape. The casting person said, have him come in. He's watching the audition tapes, and he has all the actors on it. So he keeps watching, and he realizes there are 9 other people that could have done that job that he saw that were different but equally as good. Does the job. On the last day he's leaving, and he says to the director, "I just have one question for you." So, "Why did you cast me? I saw the tape and everything." And the director laughed and says, "Well, you remind me of my uncle." So now we as actors go home and we don't eat for the weekend, and we look at our children and feel like failures. And meanwhile, that's how fickle casting is.
Yeah.
So
that's so true. A few years ago, I auditioned for a film, and it was really not a role that I would ever normally be seen for. She was a heavily tattooed rock chick from a concert, and I got a call back and another call back and another call back, and I was actually doing Dragon Con in Atlanta. So I was like, I had the guy who was looking after me running around the hotel, getting like fake tattoos. I cut up a t-shirt, I had grease in my hair. I was like, I'm going to get this film. Same thing. Didn't hear anything for months. Then I heard, no, it's between you and one other person. And then neither one of us got it. And in the end, about 3 years later, I bumped into the casting director, and I've never done this before, but I was like, can I just ask what happened? Like, why did they go off me? And he went, oh, strangest thing. Director was on a flight flying to Germany. So a woman got on, and he took one look at her, and he went up to her and he said, are you an ex-musician rock chick? And she's like, yeah, I used to be a singer. Why? And he's like, how'd you like to be in a movie? And she was the part. She looked the part, but that's casting. So.
And that's the other weird thing about being an actor. And if you're a painter, a musician, a singer, no one supposes that they can do what you do. Mm-hmm. But if you're an actor, because what we're trying to represent is life, and because what we're trying to make, we never want to show the effort of doing something. We want it just to be the thing itself.
Yeah.
People can mistake skill for anybody could do it type thing.
Yeah.
And that's always interesting, I find. So but that's our life, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, getting back to your incredible television and film career, I'm going to read out, as I said at the beginning, we're just going to dip in and out. But here are just some of the few credits and probably your most well-known ones. You have done everything from LA Law, Ally McBeal, Columbo, Seinfeld, The West Wing, Alias, General Hospital, Crusade, Lois and Clark, Charmed, Angel, The X-Files, CSI, NCIS, Numbers, The Mentalist, New Girl, Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles, and The Blacklist, plus the ones that we're going to chat about a little more deeply.
Who is that guy?
Exactly. Well, interestingly, I was reading them out to my husband, and he was like, you should do that. You should read them out to him like that, because that's impressive when you hear back like this amazing body of work. It's incredible for any actor to keep working, but to work like you have so consistently, really, I bow down.
I bow to you. Thank you. Thank you.
So the first shows that I'd like to talk about a little more in depth are both seminal shows and both hugely, hugely popular. And that is, of course, Seinfeld and Will and Grace. And you did them at kind of opposite ends of your career, if you like. So I was wondering if you remembered what your audition for Seinfeld was.
Yeah, my audition for Seinfeld, there were a lot of people. It was very quick. I felt like I did well. It is one of the shows that it's wonderful as an actor when you get to work on shows that you truly enjoy. Yeah. And Seinfeld, my wife could always tell when I was watching Seinfeld, because it was one of the few shows that would make me laugh aloud, because I grew up in the East Coast, and it's that kind of humor, with Kramer and Elaine. And so that one was special to me. And also the co-star, actually, I was in a relationship in that episode with Terry Hatcher from Lois and Clark. So it was special, but I was nervous. The thing I remember, because I was fairly new in town. Kramer, Michael Richards came out. Like, do you want to run some lines? And I said, oh, sure. So we sit on a set, and I can tell, it's been locked off. We really shouldn't be there. But no, he's sitting on come here, and he's eating an orange, and leaves a big mess. And he gets up. Oh, that sounds great. He leaves, and I'm looking at everything, and the second AD walks by and looks at me like, "What are you doing? It's a hot set," And I'm thinking, Michael. And well, there's two other things I remember. Julia Dreyfus, very nice. Really, she was the Amanda of that. Yeah. Amanda, I thought, was the welcome wagon of Stargate. She made everybody on that set, new actors, feel welcome in ways guys don't just get. It's not like they're being cruel; they just don't get that. But yeah. She was terrific. But the thing I'll never forget, I didn't know who Larry David was.
Right.
Really, because he wasn't Larry David yet.
Yeah.
And there was a guy on set, who in sitcoms you rehearse the whole thing, then there's a run through, and for the run through, this guy showed up, this bald guy, very tall, lean, sneakers on, sort of a coat, sport jackets, very, very casual. But here's the deal. He alternated between playing with his yo-yo or flossing his teeth. So I thought, this is the guy with the power on this set. And sure enough, that was Larry David.
Yeah.
You know, so you cut to a number of years later, and I'm doing Will and Grace again, which is sort of an iconic show. And now I'm much more comfortable on the set. And James Burrows directed, who's someone I'm working with. I mean, and you know, it's interesting as actors because we always assume that someone else has the missing last piece to the crossword puzzle that is ourselves. That if we can only get this piece, all of our career will just blossom and it'll be done. And you look to directors for that. And I've had this experience several times. He said nothing to me. Now, that is a good thing.
Yeah.
If you're a young actor, you think that's a bad thing. No, that is, you know, and he also stopped calling me Tony and started calling me Anthony. That is also, you know, it's sort of a familiar thing. It's the reverse of what familiar should be, but it's a back east thing. Yeah. So I loved it. And the other thing I'll never forget, you know, Megan Mullally couldn't have been nicer, and everyone was terrific. But there was a guy who played Smitty in this episode, who's the foil for Megan Mullally. He was 90 years old.
Wow.
And there we are sitting in the green room, still working. And it was actually sort of, he had just lost his wife. Just of many, many years. And he told me this, and we're sitting in the room and he's telling me this. And I said, you know, I'm really, really sorry. And I said to him, I said the opposite of what you think. I said, I bet you're glad you're here. And he was. That's where he needed to be. His wife was in the business. That's where he needed to spend his time. So those are the two things I remember. And also, you know, I'm on my run of priests now, in case you've noticed that. So it was great. It was great. And I'm thrilled. I didn't get to do, I hardly ever got to do sitcoms. I've maybe done 4, all very different. Titus was another one I got to do, which is very, Seinfeld. You know, people look at me and think, oh, you're a good actor, but you know, sitcom is not the first thing they see, you know, so, and you have to accept that, you know.
Absolutely. I've always loved, I mean, for me, sitcom, I only did 2, I think, in the time that I lived in LA. But my experience was so fantastic because it's such a great marriage between theater and film and television, because of course you rehearse like a play for 4 or 5 days and then you shoot it in front of an audience. Did you enjoy that process?
I enjoy it very much because it's like a theater. The hours are so much better than, as you know, hour-longer film.
And the pay.
The pay. But I'll tell you a funny story. But here's the thing. You can't fall in love with the laughter. The one time I was fired in television was from a sitcom. And we did the run-through. And Suanne, they laughed so much. They just carried on. And my agent, and I knew there was something really, really, really weird. My agent called and said, you want the good news or the bad news? And I said, well, give me the bad news. He says, you're fired. I said, well, give me the good news. He says, well, they have to pay you. And here's the deal, though. Until you've been fired once, there's an old saying, until you've been fired once, you're not really a professional. You know?
Yeah.
And the sitcom never really went on.
Yeah, well, there you go. That showed them.
But anyway, yeah, so those were the fond memories, and it's, you know, they're always the cherry. You know, it feels different doing a sitcom for me. It feels very different. It's very joyful. It's not, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a sort of comedic influence that you draw upon? Somebody who's influenced your work?
You know, the ones that I really like are the character comedians. In other words, they're just great actors. Like some of the stuff De Niro has done late in his career, where he walks the line between the character and the comedy in a kind of way. I was a big fan. It sort of shocked me when I saw Al Pacino in Dick Tracy. He had a role. He was so funny.
Yeah.
And So I've always admired those guys, but you know, David Hyde Pierce are incredible. But there's no connection. I mean, I could never in a million years. I sort of imitations is a great tool, you know, till you get your feet under you. But I could no more imitate David Hyde Pierce than, you know, people wonder what is that? That's very strange. I've always liked Judd Hirsch. Who else? Comedians. Kevin Kline, I think, is a brilliant sort of comedian. John Cleese, you know, Fish Called Wanda is a still go-to film when I need to, although it's probably not as politically correct anymore. The go-to film, right, exactly.
For anyone who's wondering why, I was just thinking there'll be a whole generation of people who haven't seen it going, why did she just sniff her armpit in the middle of an interview?
Yeah, he won the Academy Award. Yeah, he did the Academy Award for that, as I recall.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those more character guys. I love the not the Three Stooges, the Marx Brothers.
Oh yes.
Yeah, a lot of the classic ones. You know, I was sick when I was young for about a year, not even, maybe about 8 months. I had had to be in bed, and so I got to watch a lot of television, and I remember watching a lot of Laurel and Hardy, Marx Brothers. And it's funny with actors, how many actors something like that has happened to that became actors. I don't know.
Yeah.
You had to spend a lot of time alone, occupying yourself before there was computers and et cetera.
Exactly. The next things I'd love to chat about are your kind of big studio pictures, which were specifically The Mask of Zorro, and then the sequel, The Legend of Zorro, Blow, and Annabelle. So I'm going to start, I think, with The Mask of Zorro. And I just wondered, I mean, you know, it was Spielberg, right, who was producing. So you don't get bigger than that, right? And
no.
I wondered if you felt any kind of pressure to deliver, and if there was a sense of stepping onto that set like, oh, this is the big time.
Yeah, it was a sort of tense day. It's an interesting story. I had auditioned for the role. What's his name? I believe his name is Robert Rodriguez, who directed La Mariachi and a bunch of other. He was supposed to direct that film at the beginning.
Oh.
And I went in and auditioned for him, and it was a very different film. It was, you know, very strange and a different kind of Zorro. And I remember, because his films are so out there, when I met the man, he was very shy. He hardly looked at me. But it wasn't like he was doing busy. He was just not comfortable.
Yeah.
And I knew I did a good audition, because over the course of doing the audition, he actually looked up and started looking at me. I thought, oh, okay. So sure enough, my agent calls and said, well, this is starting in September. There's a very good chance you're going to do this. Go off and do your play. I went off and did a play. And hopefully when you come back, you'll be employed. And then I get a call in August saying, well, no, there's a whole different project. He dropped out. So that's that. I then audition again, now this time for Martin Campbell, right? Who's, you know, James Bond films, everything. And again, same role, which is very unusual because generally they clean the slate. Same role, and I go and it goes well. And here's an interesting thing. I had done a film for John Sayles, who's an independent filmmaker who's done Make One, quite a well-known American independent, very respected. He's sort of the more, every film he makes, you'd go see it, sort of in the way Woody Allen at the time, every year he'd make. And I had done that film, and Martin keeps saying to me, I've seen you. And I, being foolish, I was, oh, I don't know. You know, I didn't immediately say, yes. And come to find out, he had just seen Lone Star, which is the film I was in of John Sayles, and he loved it. And because that's an independent film, and he used to be an independent filmmaker before James Bond and Zorro, that was what tilted it. There were 8 other people that could have done that job, but I convinced him that I could do the job and that we would have fun, and John Sayles gave me the seal of approval. Correct. So I think that's why I got that job. Now, on the first day, I remember, I'm thinking, oh my God, I remember standing on the stairwell. I rode in on a horse, then had to run up. And the first thing, and I remember being very nervous, actually. And he came over to me and said, you don't have to act that hard. He said, no acting, please, basically. He was very nice. And he was one of, the British directors are great because they, I've always had very good relations with British directors and stuff because they're trying to guide you, but they don't guide you in any touchy-feely way.
Yeah.
They try to somehow make it, they joke about it or make it that it's not important to put, at least that's been my experience, to put you at your ease. And he was very, very nice. And then just, you're in a moving city. You're moving, with 400 people. It's just fantastic. Yeah. And the clothes, and of course, Anthony Hopkins and...
now you have two lovely little Anthony Hopkins stories. Would you share those with us?
Oh, well, yeah. The first one was as a student. I was going between Philadelphia and New Haven, and I stopped and saw Anthony Hopkins do Equus. And back then, part of the seating was like a Greek theater, and you sat on stage. Those were the cheap seats, for students. And it was fantastic. And because you were 15 feet away from me. And it had such an effect on me. And afterwards I had to wait for a train. So I went to a coffee shop. And who walks in 25 minutes after curtain? Anthony Hopkins. And I'm leaving to catch my train. And I just had to say, that was just fantastic. And thank you very much. And I'm studying acting. I turned to go, he said, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he just spent 2 minutes with me and asked me, what was I studying, what was it? And was just so warm and so approachable that he always had a special place. So then you cut 30 years or so, and I'm doing a film with him, and I just couldn't believe it. And, we talked about that. Of course, no reason he should remember me, but I just, it's kindness. But the other story, I'm certain that you're thinking, when you do a big film, and all of a sudden I was on that 4 months, and now it's 10 days before I come home. What do I do? What am I going to do with myself? Am I ever going to work again? What? And all of a sudden I go back to my hotel, and there is a script in my hotel room. And I open up, dear Tony, very interested in you for the part of blank, blank, blank. Spoke to your agent. All is a go with your okay. Let us know ASAP. I think, Suanne, this is it. This is how it works. This is the list. This is how it works. And you're on a list. Baby. I read one sentence. I'm in immediately, mind you. I mean, unless there's something so objectionable, I'm in. Unless there's a snuff film, I'm in. Yeah. Another good scene. So when I get to the 6th good scene, I begin to get suspicious. It is then that I track it down, and I realize they had sent the script to the wrong Tony. The script is for Tony Hopkins, and the offer was for Meet Joe Black.
Oh, there you go.
There it is. And, and to me, and for some reason, rather than depressing me, it made me laugh.
I do love that story, I have to say.
Yeah. And it sort of encapsulates like the actor's hopes and aspirations and the bottom falling out. But
absolutely, coming back to earth with a bump. I wanted to chat about another priest that you played, which was the priest in Annabelle, which when I was looking at the posters, I was like, that's where the Hathor wig went, because she definitely touched that wig. But I think horror is a really interesting genre. I used to be obsessed with it as a kid, and now I can only watch it like this. I'm like, I can barely, I literally, it's the only way I feel safe is watching like this. But I wondered, because if it's overdone, horror, I think it's a bit like, it can just fall flat. So firstly, I wondered, because you're acting effectively opposite a doll, and your journey as the priest, he has to go on quite a big journey, because at first you're like, well, you're not convinced, and then you have to be convinced. So how did you prepare for that?
It's funny, I don't tend to think at its core, I don't approach any material necessarily that differently. At its core, I just look at it as sort of an acting task.
Right.
And it's the demands, as you say, of horror or of farce or something else that will color it and make it different. But I tried to find, for lack of a better word, something I can relate to or some truth. I was a Catholic altar boy, so I had that going, and my mother always wanted me to be a priest. So, there you go. So, and I knew, I approached it that way, and I knew I was okay because at the times, I was still smoking. So that was a while ago. I haven't smoked in a while. And I remember being out in front of the church, having a cigarette in my vestments. And all the film stuff was in the back. So, I was quietly running lines. And a woman came up with her son.
Yeah.
And so I blessed the son and gave him a little pat on the head. And I thought, well, there it is. She thinks I'm that's all. That's all, the parishioner thing. But the horror thing, you're absolutely right. I think the danger for the actor in horror, this is an interesting thing. Next time you watch a horror film, turn off the sound. And you'll see this is because it is the sound that is the mixing and the way that you don't have to provide that.
Yeah.
It's done so in the editing and stuff. So you have to play a simple truth in kind of way. It's highly realistic, unless you're into the slasher films or those things, and that's slightly different.
Sure.
But these were, I thought it was interesting. They were more psychological horror films in the vein of Rosemary's Baby or something. And to my mind, The Conjuring is one of the best horror films ever made.
So
The Conjuring,
scary.
fantastic film, and I saw that beforehand.
Yeah.
To get me into the Warrens world, which are the couple that a lot of these exploits are tied to. And they were from Connecticut, which is where I'm from. But here's another interesting thing, and I don't want to, it's just fate. I was supposed to do a film in Sicily. It's a very, very low budget film, but it was in Sicily.
Yeah.
It was, playing actually a cardinal. And I did the audition. It was a long weekend. I did the audition on a Monday. And a Tuesday, I heard back, great interest. On a Wednesday, there was an offer. On a Thursday, I found out there was a problem. And on a Friday, the role was gone.
Oh.
And so it was just, you couldn't, it was too much of a roller coaster. Well, right then, I had auditioned for Annabelle. My agent called. And when I auditioned, the breakdown was for a younger man. They wanted to go with a priest 35 or right out of probably seminary, that type of thing. And they said, they still haven't cast this role. This is not an offer. They're wondering if you would do them a favor and just come in for the table read. It's not an offer, they'd be very grateful. Alfre Woodard was in it, who's one of my favorite actresses from Warmth. Yeah. So I thought, okay, I was this close from putting up my middle finger and saying, I did it, this close. And then I thought, well, why stay at home being miserable, probably making my wife miserable, because, spouses react to our emotional states.
Yeah.
I'm going to go do it. So I did. And from the moment I walked in, everyone treated me like I had the part. Now, this is what's interesting. So I went from not having the part to reading. I shoot the film, and now I'm on the tour. I'm doing all the TV shows. I'm doing all the radio shows for this movie. So I only pointed out as the schizophrenia of an actor's existence.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very successful. James Wan is the producer, and within that realm, he's quite the thing. I was amazed at how successful it was. It was shocking, but it's shot in LA, which was at the time was unheard of,
Yeah. Speaking of things grisly, you had an excellent turn on Dexter. Now, I have to say, it's not a show I ever watched, but I did watch sections of it, obviously, to see your work. And I can kind of understand how it took off, because it's a really clever idea. I remember trying to watch it, and I was just like, oh, because it is very grisly. Tell us a little bit about your time on Dexter and, how that was.
It was a very intense shoot. That first episode, It was Dexter and myself for the whole day. The whole day we beat up on each other, and they had stuntmen, but we never used them. And it was intense. It was even more intense for him because I was, as a character and as an actor, defending myself in a bar brawl. Mm-hmm. But to him, for the people who don't know, I played the guy who killed Dexter's mother, which led to, and now he tracks me down. So it was very, very, very intense. And I find it very interesting when sometimes, you know, I have one of those faces. And there's other people sort of know I'm an actor, but they don't often, depending on the genre, able to place me.
Yeah.
Right. But I have a game when I watch a person's face, and if I think they're coming to approach me and I can see a smile or a light, I try to guess what is the genre, from what show do they recognize me from? And the Dexter people are always very different than the Stargate people or the Once Upon a Time people. They're very, very different breed, but it's an excellent show, and you know, I was really pleased to be a part of it. So
yeah. Well, speaking of Stargate, that brings us very neatly to a character that is beloved by fans, seemingly also the crew and the cast. Everybody adored Jafar Master Braytak, and what a gift of a character to play. How did the role come to you?
Well, you know, it's funny. It came right after Zorro. I just got back from Zorro. So I got back mid-June, and I had the audition directly after the 4th of July. It's funny, I remember precisely because it was such an important, I didn't know it was an important audition, but because ultimately it was. And I remember working on it over 4th of July weekend, so I had plenty of time. And, you know, as actors, they say it's a reading. There are no readings. They're actings. You better go in. There is no time to rehearse necessarily. You might be shooting the next day, so they need to see it. For any of you that are actors, it's just the way it is.
That's a pearl of wisdom, everybody, because that is so true. And especially now, there's no time. So don't mess around and be like, oh, well, I'll just do a half-assed thing. Give it.
No, you give it. So I go in, and here's the interesting thing. The only thing Braytak, 133-year-old Jafar Master, Stargate, I'd seen the film and I'd liked the film, and Vancouver. Oh, Vancouver. I loved that town. You know, we had come through, we'd gone to the Rocky Mountains, and we took the train across to Vancouver. It was a fantastic time. That's all I saw, Vancouver. So when I all of a sudden got the job, now I'm going up and I'm realizing, oh my God, I got the job, but 133.
Yeah.
4 a.m. makeup call, right? 4 a.m. That's it. And so I go in for my fitting, which is interesting as an actor because we still don't know who the character is. I need the help of the designer. I need everyone. So okay, he seems to be a samurai Bushido Roman warrior, but there's something in size that is almost Shakespearean about him. So I'm putting off, and we come up with the outfit, and I'm thinking, oh, this is, yeah, I get this. This gives me some more size and bulk, you know, not height, but so I think this is great. And as I'm leaving, the second AD says, Jan Newman needs to see you in the makeup trailer. She's the makeup key. And I'm thinking, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Just come from the airport. There it is for 4 a.m. tomorrow. You know, forget the English Bay Sea Walk, for those of you who know Vancouver. And I go in, I stick my head in the makeup trailer, said, hi, I'm Tony. I'm playing Braytak, the 133-year-old. She looks at me very carefully. She goes, you'll be fine. No. Insulted. Now I'm thinking, what? You know, but of course you realize you don't need, the makeup was not an issue. And it was just terrific. It was just a wonderful experience. Again, as actors, I keep saying it's new. It's not like we're still looking. Mario Azzopardi. Did Mario direct any of your episodes?
No, unfortunately not.
Mario is a big Maltese man. And Mario is influential in the creation of Braytak. Because I watched Mario. Because Mario had some of this. He was, so there was bluster to Mario. And I thought, you know, and I'm watching, I'm thinking, yeah, no. There was something primal about Mario.
Yeah.
And you're still trying to, you're still grabbing, you know, you're still trying to create this stew in a kind of way. You know, everyone thinks we have it going in. And so I, you know, remember that. What else? Chris, of course, you know, when you read a script, you know, everyone thinks Richard Dean Anderson. I read the script. Yeah, I've watched MacGyver, and Richard, thank you very much. There's only one person I care about in the script, and that is this actor called Christopher Judge. Anyone else, I could care less. This, for great act, this is the only person that exists. Mm-hmm. So when I get on set, that's who I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Know? And, you know, I meet Chris, and, you know, it's so wonderful because you'd like to think that you need to talk and figure. We just sort of looked at each other. As a matter of fact, there's a funny story that Chris tells. I arrived, and they were shooting, and something was going on. And Richard was sort of like maybe 50 feet in front of them, and the crew, the rest of the crew was behind them. And I just arrived, and I was walking. Obviously, they weren't shooting. And I was going over to say hi to Chris, is what I was doing. And Richard, of course, being the number one, assumed I was coming to say hi to him. And all the guys were just amazed because I sort of walked right by him and walked right on Chris, and they were like, who is this guy?
What?
Well, I really didn't know any better, to be honest with you. And I'll tell you another secret. I didn't know Richard's sense of humor at the time. It's so dry.
Very.
And so caustic in a kind of way that if you're too serious and you can't deal with that, you'd think, it could get you up. Well, a couple of times I bit my cheek because and thank God I didn't say anything because there would have went, 23, there would have went 25 additional episodes, and the realization that Rick is actually a wonderful guy and a wonderful actor.
Yeah.
I loved it. They had stuff with Amanda where they forced him. I always said, Rick, in that show, we blew up the bubble, and his job, or the balloon, his job was to pierce it and blow it up. That was the humor. That was his job, unlike Kurt Russell, which was a whole different thing.
Yeah.
That was his. And so consequently, when they cornered him and forced him really to act, it was so special because he'd been a cut up most of the time. I mean, they would write comedy sometimes. It was hard to deliver it because he would change the punchline.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's Rick,
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
But your chemistry with Chris was amazing because it was tangible. And I have a little surprise for you, which is I got in touch with Chris and I said to him that I was doing this. So I hope you can hear this, but.
Hello, Miss Suanne. You beautiful creature, you. I miss you. Here, you have one of my favorite people on earth with you today. The lovely, talented, hilarious, gentlemanly Mr. Tony Amendola. Tony, I love you, brother. I miss you. One of my favorite moments with Tony, I can't remember if it was Birthright or Sacrifices or which episode it was, because I'm old now. We were sharing a symbiote in a scene, and we were lying on the shoreline in each other's arms, as good Jaffa will do. And we're in each other's arms shooting this scene for hours. Well, I believe it was Deloise who was directing. And of course, Deloise is screaming his directions of hold each other like you love each other. Cuddle like men. So during one of the takes, I unleashed this wonderfully loud, poignantly dramatic.
Ooh.
Now, everyone around us busted up laughing, but there was nothing from Tony. And after a few seconds, Tony slowly looked over at me and said, in character, "Teal'c, did you say something?" And so, of course, I broke. And it was one of the more hilarious moments that we had together, among many. I consider myself so fortunate, not only to have been able to share the screen with Tony, but also to be enveloped in his wisdom and his mentorship and his love, and most of all, his friendship, which will continue till the day I no longer walk this earth. Tony Amendola, man, I miss you, brother, and I love you, and hopefully I will see you soon. Take care, guys.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah.
This is.
That about
We don't want that. We don't want that. That's me sending a message back. We definitely don't want to hear that. I'm not having
Well,
a fight with a.
that about says it.
Exactly. I think he summed it up perfectly. You know, there's been lots of talk about the Stargate franchise coming back possibly, and I wondered if it were to come back, firstly, if you would like to be involved, and secondly, what would you like to see for Braytac?
You know, it's fun. Yes, I would like to be involved with it. Yes, and you know, there's two things. Obviously, I'd like to keep on developing the relationship with Chris and the others, but I always had this vision that there'd be a like a UN ceremony or something where, you know, just finally stepping down, because Braytac went from trainer to warrior to rebel to statesman over the course of the show. But I always imagined there'd be this, you know, very ceremonious retirement sort of thing. And of course, that's when a major attack would happen, which would force the continue. So, you know, there's that. I've always wondered if anywhere there's a Mrs. Braytac around. If there's there you go. This is Braytac. You know, something that, you know, man has job, man must do, you know, that type of thing, that, you know, sacrifice. And I always thought there would be, you know, that would be interesting, but Hathor meets Braytac, you know?
Yeah,
yes, no,
possibly a battle.
You know, there's a funny story too. In that episode, we shot it, we were waiting for golden light, you know, you know, and it was, so we shot it at the Fraser River, right, not far from the airport over there, and the salmon were running at the time. So, and I remember I don't forget, that might have been the 4th or 5th season, I forget, but there was still talk that, are they going to continue? Or the show is going to be dropped? The show going to be dropped? And I was listening to Michael and Chris and stuff. You know, I'm a guest star. I you know, who knows? You know, to me, I'm listening, and I'm watching the salmon jump, and it's one of the most beautiful things. They jump up, and the sunlight catches them, and they shine and everything. And I said to the two of them, I said, Stargate's coming back. What are you talking about? Stargate is going to be renewed for the next season. So how do you know? And I said, well, look, I pointed to the river. Even the salmon are jumping up to get a look at you guys. So, that was my...
And then it came true.
And it came true for like 5 or 6 more years. So.
Exactly. And actually,
that recording of Chris was quite moving. So thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. He was a real sport. I always like to do a little surprise if I can for my guests. So I'm delighted that that you liked it.
I'm surprised it didn't have any sound effects or anything. No, Chris.
I think he'd just woken up.
Oh, okay. Yes, it sounded that way, didn't it?
Either that or it was a very rough afternoon. I don't know. We'll have to ask him.
Yeah.
Actually, and it was because of Stargate, that a kind of serendipitous connection that kind of led you to your role as Kagami in Continuum. What was that connection?
Well, you know, it was very funny. There are some jobs, and you probably have done this, where you wonder, why me? How did this happen? And this role came up in Continuum. And I you know, went through the whole process. I auditioned once, auditioned twice, had to come back, you know, and it was getting serious. But I'm thinking, what is the connection? It was almost like there was a big cosmic finger being pointed, you know, saying, "You're the one."
Yeah.
I wondered, and finally I looked it up, and the guy who wrote the episode that Braytac premiered, his name's Jeff King.
Right.
And he was one of the executive producers, along with Simon Barry, who's a fantastic guy and creator, and has Warrior Nun right now. He's the guy from Warrior. And that was my connection. And I thought, oh, that's what it is. So it's always useful to try and track that down, because I would have walked in unknowing, you know, that how thankful I needed to be to Jeff. And because I'm certain, again, we all know there are 8 or 9 people. And Jeff said, no, I saw that episode of Stargate. He took what I wrote and made it, you know, you love it when it's sort of like an alchemy of sorts that goes in. And so that led to Continuum, and that led to another winter in Vancouver, and I was made honorary Canadian. Friends gave me a leaf and everything, you know. I love it. I really, I imagine you love Vancouver too,
right?
I
love it.
Yeah. You know, what a great nation, and as the people, and so there it is. I hope I get a chance to go back up there again, although, you know, I have worked there since. So.
Yeah, you will. I feel it. With Kagami, he's a very layered, complex character, and has to make some very questionable, I suppose, decisions for us. And I wondered how you, as Tony the person, worked your way towards someone like that. Because, you know, some people would call it a terrorist, some people would say freedom fighter. It's that whole thing. So I wondered what your process was with that.
Yeah, there's a saying, some wit said, you know, you can describe Kagami as the black sheep of a very gray family. You know?
Yes.
You know, you're always looking for a way in, something, it can be anything. One of the images I use is I try to go to an organ in the body. Yeah,
I've heard you mention that a few times. So tell us a bit more about that. That's fascinating to me.
Well, you can, it's where people lead from. You know, we all know some people lead from their intellect, some people lead from their emotions, some people lead from intuition. It's all of those sorts of things. And Kagami was almost a Lenin Trotsky-like character who was well on his way possibly to becoming a Stalin. You know, but he was trying to create change. It was a potent series because it was right in the midst of the Occupy movement. You know, that's when that was going on, and so that was an image too for him, and it was very, very useful to have that, because I couldn't come in with, you know, exposing myself. That's not what he does. He wouldn't be true to the character. So you have to do that, particularly in relation to another character I was playing simultaneously, which was sort of interesting, to be playing these two characters side by side. I got cast in Once Upon a Time.
Yes.
In Once Upon a Time, I'm playing a very iconic role, archetypal of Geppetto. So now you got those two. I'm doing it at the same time in Vancouver, but what a joy.
Oh, yeah.
Actors never get overworked, you know, because we're thinking, oh my, and we know we'll have plenty of time to rest another time. But to really answer your question, it has to be almost in contrast. Kagami mental, ends justify the means. Very cold. Jeff and Simon created a flashback that you learned why he was like this. And generally that's always very personal. It was a family thing. People were killed and he had to, and that's sort of what made him close down in a kind of way, getting very, very cold and then Geppetto is anything but mental.
Yeah, the opposite.
It's all about the heart. And I was so appreciative that when they created Geppetto, they did not, obviously everyone thinks of the Disney movie. This is not the Disney movie. No. And they allowed me to bring in a kind of fierceness at times out of protection. That even Geppetto in that show did some questionable things, all to protect this boy. So that character was all heart. As soon as I started thinking too much, I'd say, no, Tony, that's not the character. It all was about what's going on with him. And it worked really well because unlike the film, in Once Upon a Time, it was everybody's trying to get back to the fairyland. Everyone was trying to get back to the enchanted forest. So we were all suffering in a kind of way by missing. Everyone had a missing piece to us. So there was a sadness in that show. And it played really, really well into the notion of the heart. Mm-hmm. And again, Kagami was all very mental, always a step ahead, always trying to manipulate. And he could fall back on saying, yes, it's for the greater good. Mm-hmm. But it was quite violent at times, you know. So
yeah, and Continuum reunited you with a lot of the Stargate family, including Amanda Tapping, who this time was directing you. What was she like as a director? I imagine a dream.
She was fantastic. Yeah. First of all, the great thing is we had a shorthand. There was no. She didn't. She felt like, I hoped she felt like she could speak to me and just tell me what she needed. And I did not feel intrusive, you know, asking or you know, wouldn't it be great, suggesting things as an actor. And it was just a lovely episode. And the other Stargate is my surrogate daughter in Continuum. At least the character I made into my surrogate daughter was Lexa Doig. Yeah. So we had, you know, so there was, you know, Michael, I think was in Toronto. Michael Shanks was in Toronto doing series at the time, but occasionally would pop in, and just to get spend time with Lexa was great. And the other thing is, all of a sudden, camera operators from Stargate, Will Waring, all of a sudden is the director. So there are all of these connections that were just fantastic, you know, to know each other. And, you know, but I have to correct something. I agree with you. The crew may have been happy to see Braytac and happy to see Tony. But on second thought, they realized if they saw my character, they were going back to a gravel pit. And
that's true.
I spent more time in gravel pits in Vancouver than...
They're like, not him again.
Oh, please. Tony, great to see you. Oh, no.
Exactly. So as you said, these two jobs, as so often happens with an actor, it's either feast or famine. And you suddenly had these two wonderful characters, complete polar opposites, acting at the same time. Did you ever have days where you were like, who am I today?
Well, every day is like that for us, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. Especially now.
Yeah. Well, you know, I eventually just decided on going with the red nose, and then I knew. So when I had the red nose on, you know, it's like it is a problem in rep where
yes, that's true.
You put the wrong costume on or something because off the right there. But no, frankly, it was a joy. Mm-hmm. It was a respite from the other world to go and play Geppetto after living in the hard, cold, intellectual Kagami world, and then vice versa. I've had enough of heart, thank you very much. I need some steel. And then to step into Kagami, and it was great. And also it was sort of an interesting, it was just an interest, both were interesting series for me. What Eddie chose to do with Once Upon a Time, and what Simon chose to do with Continuum were just fascinating to me. Once upon a time, everyone was thinking, well, you can't have that. I'm trying to remember, there was another series on at the time that was also similarly based on fairy tales and other things. I forget what it was called now. It was shot in Portland, and people said, oh, no, you can't have two, you can't have two. And I read the scripts and thought, oh, these are so different.
Yeah.
So I love the variety. It's one of the reasons when I can, I love the switch back and forth, between film and television and theater. Sometimes I'll do it just because, like, I'm doing some work, and one of the last things I did was Amadeus. I finally got a chance to do Amadeus, to play Salieri. And that was so refreshing to go do that and work that hard.
Yeah.
But every so often sometimes you need to make a deposit, an artistic deposit. And if you're really lucky and you're a star and you have some control, you can get that artistic deposit from film and television without question, and it's the best. But often you don't. But you can get it on stage. So I like to think of it as going back and making a deposit in my craft, in myself, in the source, because I don't know what you feel. We're one of the few professions where, we can actually track, the transition from priest to vagabond to sort of accepted profession over 2,500 years. And that excites me, the notion of being backstage, waiting to go on an opening night and think, my God, there was probably some guy just as frightened as I am, or worried or anxious, in an Aeschylus play. And that, to me, is one of the reasons I do it. It's a continuum, no pun intended, of work and a profession. So that's why I do it. It's not easy. It's much more glamorous to be film and television.
Sure.
Much more, and it's much more recognized. But there is a unique experience. One of the reasons I grew up in New Haven, and I was lucky. I didn't get into acting until college, but in New Haven, just like Bristol Rep or any of those things, in England, there were two repertory theaters, Yale Rep and Long Wharf, and they did fabulous work. Very different aesthetics. One was a company-based, more traditional rep, and one was doing more cutting-edge things. But some of my earliest experiences, seeing Christopher Walken, seeing John Lithgow, seeing all of these, just incredible actors on stage. Pacino was a young, and all I realized is when I was lost in college and I didn't know what to do on a Saturday night and I was feeling just strange, I could walk to this theater, put down the money for a ticket, a student ticket, and go to Wales or go to Ireland or go to the American South or go to a Shakespeare world. And even if it could not have been farther from my experience.
Yeah.
It was medicinal to me, but sitting in a room with 500 people, watching an event, good, bad, or indifferent, there was something medicinal about witnessing. And that's one of the things.
Yeah. And storytelling is so important. We have to, we need it. Thank you. That's what a lovely anecdote and wisdom to share with us. Wisdom to share with us.
Wisdom, I don't know about wisdom.
I've really loved doing these Hathor hosts because I must tell you, I have learned so much about the people I've interviewed. And every week there is within the body of work a little surprise, a little gem. And for me, the surprise for you or from you was your episode on Crusade, where you are quite unrecognizable under layers of prosthetics. That was 4.5 hours in the makeup trailer, I bet.
It was.
But there is a moment where your character hears Mozart for the first time, which is really interesting, bringing you back to Salieri. And there's just one moment where it's so beautiful that when I watched, and it really took me by surprise. I watched it and I was like, I teared up. I was like, and I wondered firstly, if that was in the script, because it felt almost improvised.
Yeah, it was an exciting episode to do, and Mike Vehar directed that.
Yeah,
and Mike
who weirdly directed me in something. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, yeah, that's so weird.
Yeah, and I ended up doing Star Trek, Voyager, because of Mike. But it is scripted in the sense that it's loosely described, but actually what happened is not scripted at all. And that was something Mike and myself came up with. And it's the only time I've worn prosthetic in Angel and in other series, and it's the only time I've been in the wagon that I surprised myself. I startled myself. You know when you're running lines, and I looked in a mirror and did not recognize myself.
Yeah,
and it was weird. Because I was wearing the big blue contacts and the marble contacts, and
yeah.
I mean, I was unrecognizable. No one, even in Angel, you could, if you really look carefully, you can see sort of my bone structure or something. This, nothing.
Yeah.
And it was so fantastic to do that, and so beautiful. I think it's called The Needs of Earth,
Yes.
the episode. And I always tell people, when they ask you some of your favorite episodes, they think they'll all be Stargate or Once Upon a Time. And that one was fantastic. A person you think is a Nazi, a world criminal, a Mengele, and they're hunting him down. And then you realize, no, what he actually is, he lives in a very militaristic planet, and he's saving all the culture.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing. And now he needs to decide who will, and it still moves me greatly to think, because he's just waking up trying to figure out what, and then he makes this sort of connection with this sound that he's never ever heard before, and it gives him great pleasure and hope and startles him. It's fantastic. But also, it was just one of those great surprises. It was a terrific, it was Babylon 5 Crusade. And I'm so sorry they didn't continue it. There was some difficulty between creatives and the studios, and I think the actors and the fans lost out. And it's a shame, because Gary Cole, who's terrific, they were wonderful people on it. So,
well, it was an absolute treat and a surprise for me. So thank you.
Sure, thank you.
In most recent years, you have been kept very, very, very busy as a voice actor, and have worked on some of the biggest games in the world, like Final Fantasy, the world of Warcraft, Call of Duty, and most recently Star Wars Jedi, which I believe was your first mocap experience. How was that?
It was fantastic. Let me tell you, one of the reasons it's fantastic, and it just occurred to me when I was doing it, I thought, my God, I've had the joy of being in Stargate, Star Trek, Babylon 5, and Star Wars. I thought, I bet there aren't many actors who have had even a small foot in any of those areas. So that, of course, to play a Jedi, yes, I thought of him as a cousin to Braytak, although Cordova is very, very different. He's more of an archaeologist than he is anything. But it was great fun. The voice work, you realize, as a modern actor, it's like I've never had patience for actors who said, no, I am a theater actor. You understand?
Yeah.
I've never. It's fine, great, terrific. But I believe I grew up have lived in the 20th and 21st century. I think you need to make your peace with that world in some fashion. And the worst thing you can do is not experience it. Mm-hmm. You can, if you go and try and do it and 6 months you say this is not for you, God bless you, leave. Yes, and life's too short. But the notion of saying, I don't do that, and the same thing with film and television. There's the same arrogance, mind you, about the theater. You know, why would you work that hard? Their arrogance is, why would you work that hard for so little money?
Yeah.
And you try to explain to him the, you know, the 25 years and the immediate 2,500 years of the craft and the immediate experience. They don't get it. But Cordoba was terrific, fun to work on. And voice acting, I got into it because I remember reading that actually video games and voice work was one of the most highest grossing sorts of endeavors for the studios and everything. And I thought, well, I better figure something out. So, you know, I looked for a voice agent, and the first job I got, oddly, was World of Warcraft. It was a great job that you'll appreciate it. It was a character named Khadgar, a magician, warrior type guy. And it's the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah.
Because it was recurring. I probably have done, I don't know, 15 or 16, you know, sessions. And it's the gift that keeps giving. Because as actors, to get a job, and then just afterwards, just simply get the call is so not having to audition. And that led me to mocap, which I love. You know, once you get the little, you know, the little dots and
a little tight-fitting, unflattering suit, but you know.
Oh, isn't it? But it, you know, it's a joy. There was a clip recently. I don't know if you saw it on Facebook. There was a clip. It was something effective. It was something effective. A birthday present for the son of a special effects man.
Oh no!
And, oh my God! It had this little kid. You know, he's just doing very mundane things, and then his dad puts in all, or his mom puts in all the. So now he's just walking along a railing, but then, you know, in the film he's walking along a railing, you know, that drops, you know, a mile. So I enjoy it quite a bit. It's very different. Not being able to see what you're responding to. And also, there's some problems. Have you ever worn the beak? You ever worn, you know what I'm talking about? It's where the camera, it's like a beak. It's sort of like a beak, a metal structure like in Warhorse or something, or an Equus. It sort of looks like that. Got a camera and an individual light, which, you know, and they do the whole thing, you know, they capture your mouth. It's very, very interesting. They're going to get rid of us soon enough, you know. They're doing everything they can to get rid of actors. But what's amazing is all of a sudden now you have reunions with a long-lost daughter or someone, and all of a sudden you're trying to negotiate hugging and embracing. You know, it has to be choreographed. You know, frankly, it's great. It's great fun because they're all different. It's all in a kind of way. Initially, I enjoyed it even more than film and television because we get, it's, every job is I say every job is a rose with a scent and thorns, but it's also, you get sort of accustomed to, this is how it goes. So, and all of a sudden to come in and feel like a kid again, the way you did first time you stepped on a stage or a sound stage or in front of a movie camera, to all of a sudden get that. You know, and there's a whole different vocabulary. They have to calibrate your body. So there's certain things you have to do after every take. You have to extend your arms out, and you have to do different sorts of things. And you feel like an idiot because you forget. You know, oh, you think it's over. No, calibrate. You know, and so it's great. The newness of it creates stimulus, which makes you feel alive, makes you feel, and releases dopamine, makes you feel happy. So it's a joy.
Well, what a treat this has been, and a full circle from Master Braytak to the Master Jedi Cordoba. And I'm aware that we've kept you for such a long time. There are a few, really a few fan questions, and I wondered if you have time, if you'd be kind enough to answer those. So the first one is, during your long and amazing career, you've met and worked with many A-lister actors. Which one impressed you the most so far, whether it be his raw talent, charisma, presence on screen, etc., and why?
I would say Hopkins, because it goes right back. But there's another one, Hopkins, in terms of the star, in terms of being approachable and being just warm, but just having great talent and, you know, stratospheric sort of actor, you know. But on a different note, in Lone Star, my scene was with an up-and-coming actor at the time named Chris Cooper.
Oh, I love him.
And my whole day was with him. And he goes on to win the Academy Award and stuff. So I admire great talent like Anthony Hopkins, and I think we have amazing talent these days. Oscar Isaac. I mean, there's just Michelle Williams. I mean, there are amazing young actors these days. But I always root for the character guy or gal who sort of finally breaks through. They've been doing it.
Yeah.
I always say people understand two things about actors generally: star and starving. They don't understand the working class actor who puts together a life, has a family, does the best, they pays their bills.
Yeah.
They only understand the extreme. So guys like Chris Cooper, Dennis Franz, John Spencer, who was on West Wing, if you recall.
Yeah, great actor.
I got to work with John the day after he won his Emmy, and it was such a joy. But it was very interesting because this is a guy who's been doing it forever on stage and everything, and he was quite nervous.
Oh.
He was quite nervous because now he had an Emmy. Now he wasn't John Spencer, the admired, skillful actor. He was John Spencer, the Emmy winner.
Yeah.
And it took him by surprise for a little bit. It took him a while to finally shake it off, and then we got down to business. And I thought, isn't that interesting? There's this perception. It reminds me of a story. Can I tell a funny story?
Please.
Yeah. There was a story about Rex Harrison going around with Claudette Colbert. They were in a play. I saw it in San Francisco called Kingfisher. And it was a very formulaic play, but the two of them were fantastic. And Rex Harrison, I mean, ease on stage is not the word.
Yeah.
Well, the stage manager of that, it toured the United States. The stage manager at every opening in every town, Rex Harrison would come late to half hour only on opening night. And he'd gather him by the stage. He'd be looking through the peephole in the proscenium, swearing at the audience. And this went on and on. Then he'd go on, do the show, and it was successful. And this went on. So finally, when the show was over, he said, "Rex, it's been a joy working with you. But I got a question. What is it on opening night? And you're Rex Harrison. You're looking at the audience, swearing at him." He says, "My dear boy, you don't understand. I have to go out there every night and be as good as I never was." There it is. That's fame. All of a sudden, he can't just be Rex Harrison. He has to be this Rex Harrison. And that was true of John Spencer. Now, it made him think about it made him self-conscious about his own talent. It's fascinating.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's such a double-edged sword.
Oh, yeah.
Such a double-edged sword. We could talk for days. Right. You are fluent in Italian and Spanish, and I gather the Italian is from your mother. But what is the story re-speaking Spanish?
Oh, I just always loved I'm not completely fluent, I want to be honest, but I can get by. It's just culture that attracts me. I got to do a project in Barcelona not that long ago, but what a joy, in Madrid. Oh boy. So it's just the culture that attracts me, and I love the people, I love the language, I love the whole shebang. So
yeah.
So it's more, yeah.
Dad, get off Zoom. Anyone get off Zoom. Right, two more questions. So I have, let's see, what play would you still love to perform on stage, or role, I guess?
What role would I love to try? Well, right now I'd really love to direct Misanthrope. It's a Moliere.
Oh, yeah.
That's some directing. I'm trying to think. Well, one wonders, there's Death of a Salesman in terms of the big iconic things. But frankly, I'd love to do a comedy. I think life is oppressive right now. I think we need laughter. Yeah, so that would be nice to do. What else? There is I'd love to do Prosper. There you go.
Oh, yes. Perfect. And final question, which is a two-parter. Tony, will you ever come to Australia for Oz Comic Con? And what was your favorite part of Stargate SG-1?
Yes, all you have to do is invite me.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's going to be a while, until we sort this pandemic out. But I've had marvelous times in Australia, and the people are just great. And as for I think it gets back to this episode called Threshold. That I think was my favorite episode because it was the backstory to Tilk, our relationship. And it was so intense. There was some snowshoot. There's a funny story in the snow about Chris. Chris came up to me and we're shooting outside of Vancouver in the snow, and we're training. He's a young, I'm his mentor teacher, and he's a young student warrior. And he says, what would be cool? It's freezing out here. Let's do it bare-chested. Let's, that we're almost. And I say, yeah, that's good. Okay, and I think it's, that's a good visual, a good idea. It says something there. And then it occurs to me, okay, it's going to be 3 or 4 hours, So I go back, I knock on this thing. I say, Chris, let me up you one. That is a brilliant idea because of this, this, and this. But if we're both that way, it doesn't I think it has to be like the student and the teacher is good. And he said, oh, absolutely great. So anyway, you cut to an hour later, he's on a snow blanket, it's covered with snow, and I'm just grinning ear to ear. But, that one is just special. And also, it was when I realized, I think it might have been my 4th episode, that they really liked the character and really liked the work, because Brad Wright came up to me, he wrote that episode, and it was the following episode I was doing, and he said, oh, I've been finally doing the final cut of Threshold. And he said, and he didn't say this with a smile, he just said, I just want you to know, I didn't cut a single frame out.
Wow.
And it was just said so honestly, and I thought, oh, okay, great. And and also to write that, to care that much, and give that backstory for Chris and myself was huge. So anyway, that's my favorite memory outside of Chris's pyrotechnics, So.
Yes, we all experienced those.
Yeah.
Well, you have been a mentor, a star, the patience of Job tonight because of our hiccups on YouTube. And again, apologies, everyone. It's definitely me, because it seems to go wrong on Instagram as well. But
it follows you around.
Exactly. But I just wanted to say an enormous thank you for spending such a long time answering my questions, for being such a gracious and entertaining, informative, and amazing guest.
Well, let me tell you, as I said, before this started, I look forward to when we can be in the same room together.
Me too.
Yes, it's so warm and so nice. And I want to say a special thank you to all the fans. I miss you, and I hope we can all be in the room together very, very soon. Please keep watching. You make us do our work. So thank you.
Absolutely. Perfect way to end. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.